Okay. 3, 2, 1.
Welcome! For those of you who don't know me, my name is Becky Cohen and I'm the current president of the Hillel Student Board. On behalf of the entire board, I would like to welcome you all. We are so excited to have you with us tonight, albeit virtually, for our Latke-Hamantaschen debate. To our guest participants, we are so grateful that you took time out of your busy schedules. We all know how crazy finals can be. We are so excited to hear everything you have to say. And now, without further ado, I'd like to turn this over to Rosie and Jake to tell you what's about to happen tonight.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming tonight. My name is Rosie Wolkheim. I'm a Shabbat chair on HSB, and I'm here to provide some context on what exactly we are debating tonight. So here's a less than 2-minute crash course on 2 Jewish holidays and their history. First of all, what exactly is a latke? A latke is a food that's traditionally eaten by Jews on Hanukkah. But why? The holiday of Hanukkah is commemorating the miracle of oil. There was a king named Antiochus who was set on spreading his Hellenistic worldview. And to do so, he outlawed all Jewish practices, trying to strip the Jewish people of all their religious identity. Eventually, a war broke out and the Jewish temple was looted. But even after it was looted, the Jews still wanted to perform their daily ritual lighting of the sacred menorah. But the ritual requires only a very refined oil to be used, and all the oil that had been prepared and stored was completely destroyed. After searching and searching, they did find one small jar of oil that should have lasted them only a day. But instead of that small jar of oil miraculously kept the menorah lit for 8 nights, just enough time for them to make more oil. Interpreting this story, Jews have engaged in the custom of eating fried foods for the 8 nights of Hanukkah, the most famous of this food being the latke. The next subject on the table is the Hamantaschen. It's translated to mean the ear of Haman. This is a traditional triangle-shaped cookie with jelly, chocolate, or really any filling that's eaten on the Jewish holiday of Purim. This holiday, we also remember an event in which someone tried to wipe the Jewish people off the face of the earth. It's a pretty common theme in our history. But this time, there's a man named Haman who tried to use his position as a high-level advisor to convince his king to kill all the Jews. But with the help of the king's wife, who was secretly a Jew, the king prevented other Jews from being killed and instead hung Haman. So now in Purim, we eat a cookie making fun of the shape of his ear. And as every Jewish grandpa loves to say, they tried to kill us, let us eat. Or in our case, let us debate. Have a great time.
Thank you, Rosie. Hello, everyone. I'm Jake Lefkowitz, the HSB Jewish Learning Chair. I hope that you're all ready for a great event. We'll hear tonight from 5 incredible presenters presenting each of their arguments, all of them being experts in their field. First, we have Professor Stephen David of the Political Science Department, who will argue that it is the humble latke that holds the key to America's grand strategy in what will one day be a post-COVID world. Then we have Professor Jonathan Flombaum from the Psychology and Brain Sciences Department, who will defend the Hamantash and attempt to replicate his great 2010 victory, which was on Team Latke. Then we will hear from, as he is asked to be called, Rabbi Dr. Professor Yitzhak von Pungalos of the Philosophy Department, as he proves that the very geometry of the Hamantash is actually impossible. After that, we have a dark horse entry from Professor Annie Eakin-Moss of the Comparative Thought and Literature Department, endorsing Kreplach as the all-encompassing Jewish festive foodstuff. Finally, Dean Ed Schlesinger of the Electrical and Computer Engineering Department will close us out with a novel theory of the universe, where latkes and Hamantaschen are complements and not irreconcilable opposites. Throughout the debate, we want you to let us know what team you're rooting for. To do so, pull out your phone and open your Venmo app. To keep score, we'll be using donations towards the First Nations Development Institute, Colorado nonprofit which fights poverty and food insecurity in Native American communities. So support your team and support a good cause. Venmo your donation to @JSA-LH, all capital letters, and we'll update our live counter, which you can hopefully see on the bottom of your screen right now. Be sure to indicate whether your donation is for Team Latke or Team Hamantaschen. Again, that Venmo is @JSA-LH and is all capital letters. Voting began earlier this morning, and so far Team Latke is in the lead by about $17. At the end of the event, we'll have Hopkins Hillel Executive Director Noam Bentov announce the winning team. The prize, of course, is bragging rights at the next Hanukkah candle lighting or Purim Carnival, depending on the victor, and whichever the case may be. And now we will get to the debate. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Professor Stephen David for his presentation on behalf of Team Latke.
Well, thank you, Jake. It's very nice to be here, and let's hope that next year we're actually in person. My position on the Latke-Hamantaschen debate is drawn from the class that I'm teaching this spring on Sino-American relations in the 21st century, most notably the emerging Cold War between the United States and China. And the focus of my class is on grand strategy, and given that, it only makes sense to see how the Latke-Hamantaschen debate fits into grand strategy. Now, what is grand strategy? Well, grand strategy is the way a country acquires security for itself, how it can become secure, how can it use the means at hand to prevent others from encroaching upon its sovereignty. And when we talk about grand strategy in the context of the Sino-American relationship, it's focused on how we can use grand strategy to defeat America's emerging nemesis, the People's Republic of China. Now, normally when we talk about grand strategy, we talk about a mix of economic, military, and ideological tools. But not many people know this. There is a subfield of security studies that focuses on the Latke as the key to American interests, as the key to securing American grand strategy. And it is to that I turn. Now, this subfield, this security subfield that argues that America is critical to grand strategy, makes several points. First, it argues that Latkes combine hard power and soft power. Now, what is hard power? Hard power is the ability to coerce, to force other countries to do your bidding. And yes, that's often done through military means. But when we look at Latkes, we see in Latkes, in the hardness in Latkes, in the crispness of the very best Latkes, the symbolism of hard power. Moreover, faced with this crispiness, the Chinese will have no choice but to withdraw from the South China Sea and to end their threats to Taiwan. But Latkes don't only have hard power, they also have soft power. And soft power is the ability to persuade, to co-opt, to convince others to do your bidding without forcing them to do so. Now, inside the Latke is a soft, gooey, tasty potato filling. It's delicious, far more than the pedestrian Hamantaschen. Clearly, just as Jews love Chinese food, the Chinese, once introduced to this, will crave Latkes. Chinese eating this in the People's Republic of China will immediately demand more. But the problem is they won't be able to get more, because the Latkes produced in China will be produced by state-owned enterprises, which, as we all know, are horribly inefficient and corrupt. Given the demand for Latkes by the populace of China, they will demand that Latkes be produced by capitalist factories so that enough will be made to satisfy the growing demand. So once we introduce Latkes to China, communism will finally end, replaced by good old-fashioned American capitalism, producing Latke after Latke after Latke to satisfy the craving needs of over 1 billion Chinese. I also have it on good notice that Latkes will be key to undermining the Chinese surveillance state. We all know China is very good at keeping tabs on its people. However, with the introduction of Latkes, that will no longer be possible. Scientific tests conducted by that renowned scholar, Rudy Giuliani, have shown, as clear as the election was stolen from President Trump, that Latkes will prevent the surveillance state from emerging triumphant in China. How? Well, the aroma of Latke, Rudy Giuliani tells us, interferes with facial recognition technology. As the smoke wafts over one's face, the ubiquitous cameras that you have throughout China will not be able to do their evil deed, and facial recognition technology will be undermined. Moreover, the greasiness of Latkes will destroy computer keyboards throughout the People's Republic, keyboards that are necessary to promote and maintain internet surveillance. And finally, the delicious taste of Latkes will convince the Chinese people to strive for a better life, to demand freedom and democracy, ending once and for all the one-party rule of the Chinese Communist Party. On the other hand, Hamantaschen provides very few tools by which America can confront China. Its doughy texture suggests indecision, appeasement. The jelly filling is amorphous and changing. It stands for nothing. As China promotes its model throughout the world, the Hamantaschen will be unable to serve as a counterexample, as a more attractive model. Plus, I have it on good notice that China is in fact producing its own Hamantaschen in a secret lab. Having employed its tried and true methods of stealing intellectual property, the Chinese government, I understand, has used artificial intelligence to acquire the Hamantaschen recipe from my very own wife, who, I should add, makes the best Hamantaschen in the world, and will use this against the United States in ways that we can hardly predict. In fact, as my good colleagues in QAnon report, the three-cornered hat of Haman is actually representative of a sinister plot by Beijing to undermine the United States through the three forces of propaganda, military force, and cyber warfare. We won't let this happen. It's bad enough that we are now having a war on Christmas. Hardly anyone in my house says Merry Christmas anymore. Even worse will be if the Hamantaschen are allowed to destroy America. Only the robust nature, taste, and distinctiveness of the latke stands in the way of China taking over the world and American security being undermined. We cannot and we will not allow this to occur. Having rejected America First in the last election, the American people must find a new way forward to advance American interests and defeat a rising China. That way, I tell you, is clear. From now on, it is Latke first, down with Hamantaschen, and God bless America.
Thank you, Professor David. My deepest regrets that your wife's Hamantaschen recipe was the victim of culinary espionage. An update on the voting. Team Latke has meteorically pulled ahead, perhaps in no small part because of the excellent presentation we just saw. And now, with great pleasure, we turn it over to Professor Flambaum.
Of course, I made the muted mistake. Hello, everybody. I'm just sharing my screen. Give me a moment. Yes, there we go. I'm Jonathan Flambaum. I'm a professor in the Department of Psychological and Brain Sciences at Hopkins. And today I'm here to make the case for the Hamantaschen. Now, I have certain qualifications that make me ideal for this job. In 2010, I was teamed with another professor from the Peabody School, Hollis Robbins, And we actually won the debate, but we won it making the case for Latkes. This was in 2010. Now, a lot has changed since 2010. I should play my slides. This is me in 2010. I was wide-eyed, optimistic. I would say thin, healthy looking. I had one child at the time. This is Jerry, my son. This is me in April of 2020. I'm not so thin anymore. I have 3 kids now. Like I said, a lot has changed. And one very important thing that has changed is every morning I reach for the medicine cabinet and I take one of these, a statin. Now, most of you watching are probably pretty young, so you may not be familiar with a statin yet. But if things stay more or less the same in the United States, 60% of you in your adult life or more will come to love the statin as you learn about the wonders of cholesterol. And the latke, the point I'm trying to make, is not a food for everybody. Maybe for young people, it's not a food for everybody. But more importantly, the point I'm trying to make is that the arguments I bring you today are unbiased. They come with wisdom, with a history. I've argued for the other side. I've won arguing for the other side, and I know now that this was wrong. So my arguments come with bina, chachma, and dat, which roughly translated mean hindsight. Okay, so what are the arguments that I do want to present you with tonight? There's going to be 4 steps to the argument that I'm going to make. The first thing we need to do is note that, as it's often said, the best offense can be a good defense. And so the first thing we have to do is reject what I find to be a specious argument against Hamantaschen, but really one that needs to be considered, the argument from flavor creep. After that, I'll present actual offense. We can attack the latke and see that their latke actually has one very specific problem. You might at first think it's a little technical, but it's not. The latke is non-identifiable, and I'll explain what that means. Finally, in contrast to the latke, I will demonstrate that the Hamantaschen is straightforward. You always know a Hamantaschen when you see one. I put C in red there because what I study in my lab is vision, human vision. But don't worry, this is not going to be a technical talk. There'll be a little bit of discussion of statistical modeling in the context of non-identifiability, but really, this is for everybody. I'm going to argue the case on the merits, not on my expertise. And finally, I'll make some ad hominem attacks on my opponents just to ensure the win. But owing to time, I might not get there, so DM me if you want to know more. All right, so the best offense. The first thing we need to do is reject the argument from flavor creep. What is flavor creep? All right, we all know it. There's some pretty gross, inappropriate Hamantaschen out there. I just did one quick search. This all comes from one website. I looked up weird Hamantaschen, par of cinnamon, dulce de leche, cranberry and white chocolate Hamantaschen, cardamom scented Hamantaschen with pear and goat cheese filling, gingerbread Hamantaschen with spice apple filling, Hamantaschen truffle pops, double chocolate Hamantaschen. It doesn't even look like double chocolate. They all look the same. What is going on here? Pumpkin whole wheat Hamantaschen. Okay, this is terrible. I admit it, right? This is the definition of a shanda. This is flavor creep in the domain of Hamantaschen. Hamantaschen should not have anything like cardamom and goat cheese and and they shouldn't be chocolate on the outside. All that is weird. You should have, there's prune, there's strawberry apricot or raspberry apricot. That's about it. That's really all that's appropriate. Maybe one poppy seed here and there. So this is a shanda, right? This is a strike against the Hamantaschen. But that's not fair. And to explain why that's not fair, I'm going to give you a mashal, an allegory, a parable, the parable of seltzer. Turns out the argument I'm going to make in a moment is maybe not actually a parable. Don't worry about it. But allegory of the seltzer. I'm sure everyone watching can agree with me that seltzer is the most wonderful drink in the world. Seltzer, if you grew up in a Jewish home of one kind or another, you enjoyed seltzer on a regular basis. Seltzer's amazing. It's the ideal drink to have with overly salted and overly starchy food. It's wonderful, right? What can be bad about seltzer? But have you seen what the Goyim have done to seltzer recently? I knew that there were crazy flavors. I was in the supermarket recently and I saw these mango passion fruit seltzer, spring break apricot seltzer, seltzers that aren't even clear, that look like they've got some juice in them or something. But what I didn't know about when I searched for weird seltzer or flavored seltzer. Now there's this thing called hard seltzer. What is this? They've taken it very far indeed, right? So, this is flavor creep in the domain of seltzer. And you know what? We've seen this before, right? They did this to bagels too. Again, I was expecting maybe I would see a chocolate chip bagel. I looked up weird bagels. I thought maybe I'd see a chocolate chip bagel, maybe, those apple cinnamon ones that you see sometimes. That's not even what comes up. Can you believe this? Bagelfuls. I think one of them is a birthday cake bagel. The other one's a French toast bagel, this weird healthy looking one with seeds. What is this, right? So they did it to bagels too. In fact, they did worse with bagels, okay? Trigger warning, some of you may not want to see this, but it's true. They did this to bagels, okay? So bagels and seltzer have been debased. And the Hamantaschen has also been debased. Big deal, right? Are we going to stop loving bagels and seltzer? Of course not. So we can reject the argument from flavor creep. You might hear it later from some of my colleagues. That's a specious argument. We're going to reject it. And by the way, we're not going to hold it against the latke, but there's flavor creep in the domain of latkes too, particularly a lot of butternut squash. I don't know what they have with butternut squash. And it gets worse with the latke within the Hamantaschen, okay? I've never seen a Hamantaschen with bacon. I've never heard of that. That seems, but with the latke, we've gotten there, just like with the bagel. But like I said, we're not going to hold it against the latke. The point is just that flavor creep, that the appropriation of our beloved foods and our great taste, and then the debasement of their purity and their nature, we're not going to hold that against any food tonight, I hope. Okay, so now what we have to do is go back to our outline and let me explain to you what's wrong with the latke, okay? What's wrong with the latke is that it's non-identifiable. Non-identifiability is a term that comes from statistics and modeling, but it's also, we've known about it for centuries, as with many great ideas. So here is how it's explained in the Wikipedia. In the Wikipedia, they say that in statistics, identifiability is a property that a model needs to satisfy in order to afford inference. A model that fails to be identifiable is when two or more parameters can make the model observationally equivalent. This is a little complicated, I know. You can also look, if you want, there's a long discussion of this in the Gemara, in Masechet Baba Maisa. I know this sounds complicated, but the idea is simple, really. The main idea is just that sometimes when you build a statistical model, it can't be differentiated from other statistical models. So you might think it fits the data really well. You might think it tells your story, but it turns out actually it doesn't tell the story any better than anything else. It can't be differentiated. Here's, it's put a little bit more simply in a more generally applicable way from the great posek, the Baal Bli Shem. And the Baal Bli Shem explains, he says, what non-identifiability is when you think you've got something, but you don't know how to figure out whether other things are examples of the thing you think you got. In other words, when things are similar and you don't know, you can't tell, are they different? Are they actually the same category? Who knows how to put things in the right category or not? So the great posek, the Baal Shem Tov, the Baal Bli Shem, he explained this. And so I was trying to think, can we find an analogy? I looked up Jewish paradoxes, and this is what came up. It's not perfect, but it turns out that people on the internet are confused about ZZ Top. They want to know, are they Amish? Are they Orthodox Jews? This is a good example. It's not perfect non-identifiability, but the point is, it's hard to tell. It's a situation that you find yourself in when it's hard to tell what something is. Does it qualify as the sort of thing that you're wondering about? And the latke has that written all over it. The latke is non-identifiable. No parameter or combination thereof allows you to identify one. Not shape, not color, not potato, not texture. People make latkes in all kinds of shapes. There's beet latkes. God bless my wife. She really likes those. We eat those. Dr. David, if you want, I'll send you your family the recipe. Spinach latkes. And the important thing is that you can't always differentiate the latke from other things. So look in the top right of this image. Are those hash browns or are they latkes? Well, how are you going to make a case that the hash browns aren't latkes, right? So the point is that the latke is non-identifiable. There's no property or combination of properties that lets you say definitively in any instance, this is a latke or this is not a latke. And that's a problem. Not even the absence of bacon anymore. You can't even count on that, right? So we're in a tough spot with the latke. And in fact, realizing this about the latke, that it's non-identifiable, made me realize that in some ways it's an artifact of the very Hellenism that the Maccabees fought to vanquish. And I suspect, and probably Dr. David can confirm this, that the latke actually is not part of the tradition in the way that that donuts are, or certainly menorahs or dreidels. That the latke is maybe an example of sort of the Christmasization of Hanukkah, the way that we get presents now and things like that. I'll leave it there, but I suspect also that Dr. Melamed can confirm this through his research. Okay, so the latke, non-identifiable, a very problematic food. In contrast, the Hamantaschen, you always know a Hamantaschen when you see one. I'm sure Dr. Schlesinger can confirm for us that there really is nothing, there's very little in the world that's better than the precision of mathematics, and in particular, the abstract relationship between geometry and algebra. And geometry helps us define the Hamantaschen simply. The sum of the interior angles of the cookie have to be 180 degrees. That's it. If you make a cookie where the sum of the interior angles are 180 degrees, boom, you got a Hamantaschen, you're good. If it's equilateral, even better, fine, but it doesn't have to be. And so actually there's an interesting message when we realize this, that it's this simple, right? And that actually the definition we can attribute to Euclid, who told us that any 3 points can make a triangle, and only one triangle, and that the interior angles will always add up to 180. There's actually a hidden message, therefore, a hidden musar in the holiday of Purim, to appreciate that we've had opponents, enemies in our history as Jews, but there's good ones and there's good and there's bad. Not all Greeks in this case are created equal, right? So Euclid on the left here, we can't argue that Euclid made perhaps the most important contributions ever in human intellectual history in his defining the rules of geometry, which we later were able to elaborate in terms of algebra. Antiochus on the right, on the other hand over here, who wanted Jews to eat pigs, right? Of course, he's an awful, terrible person. But so we shouldn't judge all Greeks the same, just like we shouldn't judge any people, any particular group all the same. There's always going to be good people and there's always going to be bad people. And so from the Hamantaschen, we actually learn an additional hidden musar in the holiday, from the holiday of Purim. So the bottom line is this: the Hamantaschen is identifiable, right? And it's no surprise that there's a relationship that's very clear between the Hamantaschen and the Magen David. And I'm sure Dr. David and Dr. Moss can confirm for us that actually when the Magen David was created as the symbol of the Jewish people, it was inspired because they were actually eating Hamantaschen at the time. So with that, I say thank you, be healthy, be happy, happy holiday, happy Hanukkah, and thank you for including me in this wonderful event.
Well, thank you very much, Professor Flambaum. I was very gratified to see your reliance on the Baal B'li Shem, who I myself am a great follower of, although I have a hard time remembering the details exactly of who he is, but again, a great follower. As it stands right now, I believe Team Latke is maintaining its very solid lead and has in fact increased its lead from about $50 to $70. So Team Hamantaschen, if you're out there, there's definitely still time to catch up, but you got to get moving now. And with that, we will now hear next from Rabbi Dr. Professor Yitzhak von Pongalos.
Good evening and Ram Shatava. In the beginning, there was the Latke, and the Latke was with God, and God was the Latke. And the Latke was made flesh and dwelt among us. These are the true and unforgettable words by which Rabbi Yochanan or Johann opens his holy and gewaltige book. Here, however, we will not enter into the 2 millennia year controversy as to whether the Latke was or was not incarnated. You believe that the Latke is fleischig? Good for you. Others believe that the Latke is pav? Fine. Let them enter into the kitchen of heaven with whatever Latke they have. Here, we are supposed to do philosophy, not Frömmkeit. Our investigation will address the pure Latke, the Latke für und an sich. Now, I have nothing for the Latke in some way. But what I'll try to convince you here is that Hamantaschen are simply impossible. It's simply something which is a mere appearance, a shine, a garnished. So, let me, if you don't mind, let me share my vision and open my cards. Oh. Ja, also. Oh, sehr gut. Many, well, let's see first of all, so what we are going to show is that there is an a priori proof for the impossibility, not just in actuality, impossibility of any Hamantaschen. Now, we have a plan. I will begin with an ode to the Latke by my late friend, Professor Dr. Edward Stankiewicz. After that, we'll speak about the great two principia of sufficient reason and identity of indiscernibles. After that, we'll speak about the impossibility of equilateral triangles. Now, I do think that there will be some people who will have some stilquetch and try to say, well, perhaps equilateral Hamantaschen are impossible, but perhaps there are non-equilateral Hamantaschen. So in the next section, we'll prove the impossibility of triangles überhaupt in general, all triangles. And then we'll be able to conclude that no Hamantaschen are possible, pure idiot. So we have a long way to go. Let's begin. Many have sung the praises of the Latke, but none has fared as well as the poet and linguist Edward Stankiewicz, my friend and teacher at Yale, and also a professor in the past at the University at Chicago. Let me recite a stanza or two from Stankiewicz memorable Ode to the Latke. A Jew develops from the cradle a craving for Knesh and Knedel. Ja, no, was can you? He'll glorify gefilte fish, but I love the Latke dish. How romantic. No Jew could possibly endorse that yell, my kingdom for a horse. But he would give his shirt and Latkes for a couple of Mame's Latkes. Having sung the praises of the Latke, let's begin with the philosophical work. All this is true, Haivekayim, what an ode, what an ode. So yet, I sincerely believe that these wonderful praises for the Latke are simply redundant. As my distinguished colleague, my distinguished late colleague, Ted Cohen-Godel, or if you wish, Ted Cohen-Gödel, had already pointed out, true philosophy leads to the Latke. Where is that? So see Latke-Muskeit, Latkeismuskeit, Latkeismusstreit, sorry, Seite 16. The reason being that there are simply no Hamantaschen in the world. Hence, the whole debate is just ridiculous. Much ado about Gurnisht. Note, however, that unlike my aforementioned colleague, I will not only argue that the Latke and the Hamantaschen are not commensurate, that's what Ted Cohen-Gödel was arguing, but rather I will provide an irrefutable, sound and a priori proof of the impossibility of Hamantaschen. Yet, you do not need to open the window. You do not need to open the window or even your eyes in order to see that there are no Hamantaschen in the world. Trust your reason, God's image in men, rather than the filthy senses which you share with the rude hippopotamus and the savage porcupine. Now, I have to tell you, I have a long story about the poor hippopotamus. I mean, the Czech word for the hippopotamus is chroch, and the declensions of the chroch are gewaltig. I mean, that's something that you've never seen. What are the Czech declensions of the chroch? But I'll put that aside. Moreover, the proof that I'm about to suggest is free from any stupid moral or aesthetic considerations. Frankly, I cannot care less about the alleged illegality of poppy Hamantaschen. Leave the war on drugs to the warlords in Washington. Nor am I bothered by the stomach ache of prune Hamantaschen consumers. All this is just a brute anthropocentrism. From the point of view of God or nature, this is just Gurnisht. As the divine Spinoza said, good, evil, healthy, unhealthy are just fictions of the human mind. Ethics, part 1, at the end, appendix. Unlike these shaky, softy, and unserious arguments, our proof relies on pure and unadulterated metaphysical principles. Many of you have probably heard about the great principle of sufficient reason. For those of you who haven't, let me explain this noble principle in a few words. That principle simply states that for everything that happens must be a reason, a ratio. Put more rigorously, the PSR, principle of sufficient reason, demands, and here you have a precise statement, for every factum there must be a ratio or a reason why effum is the case and not the other way around. It's pretty intuitive. That's absolutely natural principle. However, well, let's go the other way around. So according to this principle, there must be a reason why the world exists. And there must be a reason why a cow has 4 legs rather than 3 or 17. It could have 3 or 17 legs. And there must be a reason why birds love to release their exertions over my nose, etc. I believe that it is now the principle is clear enough. Now, one of the immediate corollaries of the PSR is another great metaphysical principle, the principle of the identity of indiscernibles. Here's what the principle of the identity of indiscernibles, or principium identitatis indiscernibilum, is saying. If Xius and Yus are different, meaning non-identical, there must be a quality that distinguishes Yum from Ephum, or Xium from, or distinguishes Xium from Yum. Let's take an example. All, as you may all know, Tinky Winky and Paul, or if you wish, Donald Trump and Bibi Netanyahu, though equally divine, are not identical. They are not identical. They are not divine. I mean, well, Tinky Winky is. Tinky Winky is not Paul, and Paul is not Tinky Winky. Now, according to the noble principle of the identity with indiscernibles, there must be a quality that explains why Tinky Winky and Paul are not identical. One such explanation will be that Paul is red while Tinky Winky is purple, for example. Here we just pointed out qualities, right? Qualities which distinguish the two. Well, that's not so easy, to be honest. There is a lot of philosophical work that needs to be done here. Many metaphysicians would object to the use of colors in order to explain the identity of objects. Colors, it is said, are merely secondary qualities and cannot be used to explain foundational metaphysics. So here is a better explanation. Tinky Winky enrages who? Well, Tinky Winky enraged Newt Gingrich and his Republican Scotsman, while Paul doesn't. So here's a real deep and serious metaphysical difference that easily explains why Paul and Tinky Winky are not identical. Very simple, postulus. At this point, you may start wondering what all this subtle metaphysics has to do with the Hamantaschen. No? So let's start doing our work. Actually, we're almost done. 4 Minuten, and we are done. We call that Hamantaschens are in the form of a triangle. I will now show first that equilateral triangles are impossible, and that as a result, also no triangle is possible. Now, there is something bizarre about this equilateral, whatever term. What a word. I mean, why is this so difficult to pronounce it? For God's sake, it's a name of a triangle, not a name of God, Chas v'sholom. Imagine, so let's start with thinking about a certain cozy, nice, and friendly equilateral triangle. Let's call the triangle Fred, or if you wish, Reuven, whatever. Now, Fred has 3 equal sides. We need to name these 3 sides. We can name them Paul, Peter, Paul, and Mary, or perhaps Alma, Cookie Monster, and Miss Piggy. But I think that for our current purposes, it would be much more apt to name them Avram, Yitzchak, and Yankov, right? Avram, Yitzchak, and Yankov. These are what the Americans are calling Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and the Zionists are calling Avraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov. Well, we'll be content with the Jewish names, neither American nor Zionists. Now, there is a crucial question. How are Avram, Yitzhak, and Yaakov distinguished from each other? Look, how are Avram, Yitzhak, and Yaakov are distinguished from each other? By virtue of what fact Avram is not Yitzhak? By virtue of what fact Yitzhak is not Yaakov? And by virtue of what fact Yaakov is not Avram? Remember that all we know about these three fellows is that they are the three equal, pay attention, equal sides of the same triangle, Helfred. Obviously, the property of being one of the sides of Helfred cannot distinguish them from one another, since they share it in common. Otherwise, it will not be an equilateral triangle. So why are they different from each other? Why Avram is not Yitzchak, Yitzchak is not Yaakov, and Yaakov is not Avram? And as perhaps you would say, each of them has some special and unique qualities. So let me say, what we are doing here will give you an explanation according to the to Frumkeit on the beginning, and then according to Machshove, or if you wish, according to theology, and then according to philosophy. So I'll begin with theological explanation. Perhaps you would like to suggest a distinction like the following. Avram is a distinguishedly righteous side of a triangle. Yitzchak, a distinguishedly pious side of a triangle. And Yaakov is a distinguishedly acute side of a triangle. Lo and behold, for this is a horrible, horrible heresy, and apikosut mamish. When we say that Avram is a distinguishedly righteous side of a triangle, do you dare to imply that Yitzchak and Yaakov are, God forbid, not as righteous? What do you mean? Or when you say that Yitzchak is distinguishedly pious side of a triangle, do you dare to imply that Avram and Yaakov are not as pious? Chalila v'chos. How can it be? How can one tolerate such a heresy? Next time, you'll dare to tell me that neither the Lubavitcher Rebbe nor Donald Trump are not messiahs. God forbid. Now, we must, I argue, affirm that Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov are all righteous, all pious, and all acute. And they are equally righteous, equally pious, and equally acute. Some of our Kabbalistic friends try to make a distinction between them, and that's a complete theological blunder. But we'll put that aside. In fact, it is easy to see that we can iterate this argument and that there cannot be any difference between the three sides. For otherwise, how could the three sides be equal? They are equal, meaning identical. But if Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov are not distinguished from each other, then according to the holy principle of the identity of indiscernibles, the three sides are identical to each other, and therefore the figure state is just one single side. Whatever you give it, you can go call it an hippopotamus, a Hashverosh, or you can call it a square, whatever. Go ahead. Which merely has the illusory appearance only, shine of a triangle. Obviously, the same holds for any other equilateral triangle. I hereby conclude that we just proved the impossibility of equilateral triangle, and therefore no Hamantaschen are possible, QED. Now, I'll do it very quickly in 2 more last minutes. I'm sure that some people, some heretics, are going to say, well, perhaps the equilateral triangles are impossible, but there are other triangles, and perhaps we can have a Hamantasche that is not equilateral. Look, that's an interesting idea. So here's my postscriptum. Oh, well, it is just to prove that it's impossible to have any kind of triangles. One might, so there, okay. Okay, well, this is simply, to be honest, a non-starter. Let me be clear and blunt. There are no triangles, neither obtuse nor acute, neither right nor is a scale. Yeah, is a scale. Okay, another name of God. None of the above is conceivable, none is possible, none is actual. The intricate details of this proof appear in a footnote to my forthcoming work, Kritik der geschmutzige Vernunft, Critique of Dirty Reason. Where is that? Seite 20. I won't bother you with the difficult details of the proof, but the principal argument is pretty simple. So here is it just on your screen, on your Machze. Equilateral triangles are the most perfect triangles, and we know from our master Spinoza that the more perfection a being has, right, the more reality belongs to it. So, if equilateral triangles are, which are the most perfect triangles, and therefore the most real triangles do not exist, how can an imperfect triangle exist? That's just nonsense. So from this, we can conclude that if equilateral triangles are not real, then no other triangle is real. And since we have shown that equilateral triangles are not real, we can conclude that no triangles are real, and hence there are no Hamantaschens, QED. Agite Nacht.
Thank you, Rabbi, Dr. Professor, for that very enlightening presentation. I hope that your book does wonderful sales and enlightens many people. And I wish you luck with also figuring out the reason for why the birds, well, do what they do with the nose. Right now, I believe that Latke is still quite ahead of Hamantaschen by about $80, I believe. And with that, we will turn to our presentation by Professor Annie Eakin-Moss on Kreplach.
From the Department of Comparative Thought and Literature here at Johns Hopkins University, and I'm here today not to take sides in this acrimonious debate among my esteemed colleagues, but to present to you a compromise candidate that is clearly vastly superior to the humble Latke or the fancy pants Hamantasch, the Kreplach. Here they are, Kreplach, an homage to Kreplach. Combining the best features of the Latke and the Hamantasch, Kreplach are both fried and filled. And plus, as I will explain, they do not represent, according to folk etymology, just one Jewish holiday, but can stand in for 3, Yom Kippur, Hoshana Rabbah, and Purim, according to a folk etymology. Of course, the folk do not speak or spell Yiddish very well. And as a Yiddish speaker, I feel it's my duty to first give you a quick lesson on Yiddish grammar to dispel some common mistakes. The singular of Latkes is Latke. The singular of Hamantaschen is Hamantasch, and the singular of Kreplach is Kreppel, which kind of sounds like a little crap in Yiddish. So we're going to use the plural for both the plural and the singular today. Now, I know I was supposed to mount my defense from the point of view of my scholarly discipline, but since most of the writers I study and teach were anti-Semites, either casual anti-Semites or raging anti-Semites, I'm going to cancel them and speak from the heart. As the token woman on the panel and a member of the steering committee of the program in Women and Gender Studies here at Johns Hopkins, I decided I would unironically perform my heteronormative gender role and Ashkenazi normative Jewishness and offer you an irresistibly cute cooking video featuring my Yiddish-speaking 6-year-old daughter, Celia. I am bringing you today a paean to the lowly kreplach. Kreplach. As a Yiddish-speaking, half-Asian Jew of choice, this is really my soul food, the kreplach. Kreplach are basically Jewish wontons. And who doesn't like a wonton? Fried, boiled, in soup, on your plate, with hot sauce. The kreplach are really an inspirational food for our time. Of course, we have to talk about the gender studies angle of all this, because this is a food that brings to light the gender dynamics of Eastern European society. Making things fancy for Shabbos, what does that mean? That means the men get to go to study and to pray in the shtibel, and the women are home turning the chopped meat into kreplach. And here I am. I've made 3 so far. There are 5 people in my family to feed. How many more of these do I need to make in order to feed everybody? Hopefully they'll come in and help me. Ah! Here's my daughter. I have some help. Okay, so, was beste Tom? Was helfen mir? Okay, ganz gut. Ganz helfen. Gut, das ist ein Stück für dir. Wir müssen es einfüllen mit ein bisschen Fleisch. Schmieren die Ecken mit Eiweißkoch.
Wir rühren das mit meinen Händen?
Ich will es Tom für dir. Ja, du willst es rühren? Nein, okay, rühren ist dein Pfanne. We could do it in English, that's true. Okay, let's do it in English. Okay, so you've got egg white on one corner. I'm going to put that right there in the middle. And then you're going to fold it over and push down. Fold it over. Let's see, can they see? Yeah, they can see. Great. Okay, fold the part that doesn't have any egg white there. Now fold it over in a perfect triangle and press
like
around. Just like origami. Yeah, exactly. Do you know what these are? You do? What are they called?
Kreplach?
Kreplach. Very well said. You know what kreplach means?
What?
Well, it means these. Do you know how to spell kreplach? How do you spell kreplach? Okay, tell them. How do you spell kreplach? Kuf.
Kuf.
Kur.
Re.
Uh-huh.
Ayin.
Ayin.
Pei.
Uh-huh.
Lamed.
Uh-huh.
Ayin.
Uh-huh.
And
Lager half? Good job. Okay. And you know when you eat kreplach in Jewish tradition, you eat them on Yom Kippur.
Really?
Kuf. Uh-huh.
So why are we doing?
Well, after Yom Kippur, right? Yom Kippur, after Yom Kippur, to break the fast, or maybe before to get good and full, because they're filled, right? They're filled. Hoshana Rabbah and Purim. And so you know why you eat them for Yom Kippur and Hoshana Rabbah? Because that's when our fate is sealed, and we're sealing the meat in the dumpling. Pretty good. That smells so good. Okay. Wait, you forgot the egg white. You forgot the egg white. Oh, it's not going to stay closed. It's going to open up. It's going to go into our soup, and that's going to be no good whatsoever. Okay. So why are they for Purim?
Because of the pay.
Because of the pay, and they're for Purim because of the pay. And so why would we have kreplach for Purim? Can you think of a good reason?
No.
You can't think of a good reason. They kind of look like Haman's hat, right? Shalosh Pinot. Yeah, okay.
I don't remember the song.
You don't remember the song? Okay. So why would we have kreplach? What's hidden in the Purim story? Like, we're hiding the meat. We're hiding the good stuff. So what gets hidden in the Purim story? What do you think? What's not in the Purim story? Okay, what do we have in the Purim story? Esther.
Yeah.
Yeah, the princess. The queen. Who's not in the Purim story that's in all the other parts? God, that's right. Right. So kreplach also are a metaphor for Purim because the real mystery is what's inside. Where's God in the Purim story?
No.
You're smart. Good job. So that's it for my homage to Kreplach. How could you resist?
All right. Thank you very much, Professor. And personally, I am a little bit partial. I can't really vote for them, but I am indeed proud to say I'm on Team Kreplach. Anyways, I believe that we still have Team Latke significantly ahead. And now we will turn to our final presenter, Dean Schlesinger.
Thank you, Jake. And let me share my screen with you so that I can properly provide an argument. Let me ask, I hope that folks are seeing the presenters, the presentation. Hang on just a moment. Try that again. Okay. So we've heard a lot of arguments tonight about the Latke and the Hamantaschen, and which is the preeminent food that really describes the essential Jewish food and is responsible for bringing the greatest joy to the world. And it's fair to say that this argument has gone on for millennia. The discussions, the Talmudic discourses have engaged the Jewish world since time immemorial. Which is the quintessential representative of Jewish thought and culture, the Hamantaschen or the Latke? This has filmed volumes of literature, but I would like to suggest that this argument between the Latke and the Hamantaschen is perhaps a false dichotomy. And if we delve deeper into the meaning of Hamantaschen and Latke, we see that they are actually two sides, in fact, three sides of the nature of the universe. Let's begin with the Hamantaschen, the canonical Hamantaschen. What do we know about Hamantaschen? Well, the first and foremost thing we know about the Hamantaschen is the shape, as has been mentioned by my colleagues. The shape is well defined. In fact, often the shape itself is noted as the defining feature of the Hamantaschen. So the shape must mean something. What does it mean? We see that we have three unique axes of the Hamantaschen. These, I assert, are nothing more than the X, the Y, and the Z dimensions of the three-dimensional space in which we live, the universe. But more, there is a unique fourth axis, perpendicular to the other three, an axis of symmetry, but somehow different than the other. And so we recognize that this is the time axis of the four-dimensional space-time as described by Einstein. We see that the shape of the Hamantaschen is the shape of the universe. More than this, the canonical Hamantaschen is filled with what? It's filled with poppy seed. But is it really poppy seed, or is it dark matter? So we understand that the dough represents the visible universe with its four-dimensional Einsteinian shape. The filling is nothing more than the dark matter that deforms the visible universe and actually constitutes a very large fraction of the total universe. And so together, we have the visible universe, dark matter, and more. What are the poppy seeds? Little, round, black spheres. Clearly, these represent one of the most unique and important features in our universe, the black holes. So this is what the Hamantaschen represents. It represents the four-dimensional Einsteinian space, including dark matter, including black holes, the universe at its largest cosmic dimensions. In contrast, how are we to think about the Latke? What is the Latke? In contrast to the Hamantaschen, there is no defined shape to the Latke. Each Latke is different. Moreover, each Latke is comprised of what? Discrete quanta of potato. And each quanta of potato can be in a different state, fully fried, partially fried, and in multiple configurations. And so we see that the latke is comprised of quantized potatoes, multiple states in multiple configurations. And if I think about the latke, it's very difficult for me to define the edge of the latke. Is this the edge where the bulk of the latke ends? Or is this the edge of the latke? And what do I do with a region such as this, surrounded by the latke, but not actually part of the latke? So what I suggest to you is that there is an uncertainty in the spatial position of the latke. Where is the latke? It can only be spoken about in probabilistic terms, as in, I think my latke is bigger than your latke. And I think my latke is on my plate. No, wait, it's gone. Did you eat my latke? Did I eat my latke? Did you take my latke away? We have complete spatial uncertainty with the latke. And why do we eat latkes? It was mentioned before, we eat latkes because they are fried in oil and they remind us of the miracle of the oil. But how long was the oil supposed to last? Originally 1 day, but it lasted for 8 days. Well, if it lasted for 8 days and it was going to last for 1 day, then isn't the miracle really only 7 days? So which is it? Is it 1 day? Is it 8 days? Is it 7 days? We have complete uncertainty in time. So we have uncertainty in space, we have uncertainty in time, we have a quanta of potato comprising the latke. I suggest to you that the latke represents the quantum mechanical nature of the universe at its smallest dimensions, with uncertainties in space and time that are made up of a multi-configuration of quantized potato space. And so the Hamantaschen represents the cosmos at its largest dimensions. The latke represents the cosmos at its smallest dimensions. But there is also the spiritual realm, beyond space and time and the observable universe. If one looks at the essential ingredients of latkes, you see for latkes, shredded potatoes, onion, eggs, all-purpose flour, teaspoon of salt, and peanut oil. For Hamantaschen, eggs, oil, sugar, vanilla, baking powder, flour, and poppy seed. Let us remove the redundant ingredients in these two recipes. We remove the eggs, we remove the oil, and we remove the flour, not the baking powder, the flour. When we are left with only the essential ingredients without any redundancy, we see that we have 10 unique ingredients for the two foods together, the latke and the Hamantaschen. I think this is a Kabbalistic remez as to what these foods are all about. 10 unique ingredients? Seems to me these are the 10 sfirot of Kabbalah. And how do we form latkes? How do we form Hamantaschen? We have to gather shards of potatoes or gather poppy seeds. Clearly, this is akin to gathering sparks of Kedusha. Could there be more hidden messages that I have not fully plumbed? Absolutely, without doubt. So what do I conclude? I conclude that the Latke and the Hamantaschen taken together represent the entirety of creation as at cosmic dimensions, quantum mechanical dimensions, and indeed even in the spiritual realm. And so I say to you, eat both, eat often, ignore the calories. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dean Schlesinger, and amen. Amen. Thank you to all of our presenters. This now concludes the presentation part of this evening. And for the final update on Team Latke versus Team Hamantaschen, we go to Hopkins Hillel Executive Director, Noam Bentov.
Thank you, Jake, and thank you to all the debaters. I apologize, my screen is, you can obviously see the winner of the night, but I did want to make an honorable mention to Team Krepalach. Team Krepalach, which raised $40. Team Hamantaschen coming in second place with $80 raised tonight. And Team Latke, the big winner of the night, with $159 raised tonight. I am extremely grateful to all the debaters. And without further ado, Jake, I will turn it back to you.
Okay, thank you, Noam, and thank you to every single one of you who helped us raise $279 for First Nations Development Institute to support food insecurity and sovereign food systems for Indigenous communities. Once again, I'd like to thank our amazing debaters for your time and thought. I know I've definitely learned a lot and have a lot to think about. I'd also like to thank the entire Hillel Student Board for working tirelessly on this event during this crazy pre-finals time period, with a special shout out to Alana Marjlees, our incredible marketing chair, and your next Hillel Student Board president, and Jake Lefkowitz, our incredible learning chair, for putting their blood, sweat, and tears into making sure this event ran as perfectly as it did. Lastly, I want to thank all of you for coming out tonight. We hope you had as much fun as we did. Have a great